So, you know how literally just last week I was complaining about enemies to lovers and how it is such a difficult trope to pull off to convince me, and it takes such intention, and it's really difficult for me to find an enemies to lovers story that I buy it and I enjoy it. Yeah, I found it. Oh, the irony. Unbeknownst to me, although makes perfect sense now, I have been in a reading slump since like January, December of last year. It has been a very long time since I've read a series or any book that I just devour, that I just love. That reminds me why I read in the first place. I've been reading a lot of what I call middle-of-the-road books. They're not horrible, but they're not great either. And then I read the Folk of the Air series. I devoured it. I loved every second of it. One of my new favorite series, 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 stars. Loved this series so much. I should probably give myself a little bit more time to process what I've read because wow, what an experience, but here we are. We're going to discuss the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. This video will contain spoilers for the Folk of the Air series, The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. Proceed with caution, or I'll see you in the next video. This was published in 2018, and it was probably around that time, if not 2019, that the whole reason I came to know about this book's existence was through fan art. I found a fan art of Jude and Carden for my own character inspiration for one of my own books. The vibes that they had were fairly similar to kind of the general aesthetic of my own fantasy series that I've been working on. Because I continually found the fan art for The Cruel Prince, I decided years ago I needed to read The Cruel Prince. And then I found hype for The Cruel Prince everywhere. People loved this story, and that made me even more intrigued. So, now that I'm into reading again, and I own the series, I decided, finally, at last, after many years, I would see if this series, and this book in particular, would live up to the hype. It does. Each book took me one day to read in the main trilogy, and then, of course, I read How the King of Elfham Learned to Hate Stories. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I apologize. And, of course, this took me, like, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half to read. Again, I love the word devoured because that describes my experience to a T. Devoured. Could not put down. I haven't been this obsessed over a book series in years. I could go book by book and talk about it, but it's me on my channel. So instead, we're going to talk about overall vibes. One of the biggest factors about this series was the fascination I experienced specifically with the main character Jude. I don't think I have read such a flawed and wicked and cruel female character ever, and I was so taken by it. I was so taken by this idea that she's not outwardly a villain, but she's certainly not a hero. She's not like a saint. She's not someone that you admire for their good works and their good deeds and their good thoughts. Definitely not. She's wicked, she's mean, she's clever, and to be fair, she is a product of being immortal in fairyland, in the world of wicked, cruel, clever fairies. And I loved it. I hated Jude, and I loved that fact. This book series is so fascinating to me because it was not a love-hate read, right? Like, I wasn't reading it because I hated it and it was my passionate hate that was propelling me forward. It was like, I would detest these people in real life and I would not want to have anything to do with them, but in the context of this story I couldn't get enough and I genuinely loved it. It was such a unique experience for me, and I just loved that experience overall. And I think one of the reasons that I was so taken by this world of fairyland is, like I said, it's cruel, it's wicked, it's clever, it's full of riddles and tricky wordplay. And of course, magic and mermaids in a very different way that last week's video was about magic and mermaids. And again, I cannot say that I've read anything like this before. I loved the political intrigue. Definitely made me want to step up my game in that department. Like, hey, if you're gonna have a fantasy novel with political intrigue in it, good luck. The other thing that I really appreciated about the Folk of the Air series is, compared to a lot of other fantasy series, mostly fantasy trilogies that I've been reading recently, specifically with the Serpent and Dove trilogy, a big comment that I kept making over and over to myself was, how is there more? How is there more story? How has this been drawn out to be 3 books? And I do think that a lot of that complaint stems from just not being able to enjoy the story, because comparing that to the Folk of the Air series, not once was I sitting here going, how could there be more plot? How can you draw this out? This series feels so perfectly paced. Again, I am in awe. It totally makes sense. This feels like it was written as one just giant 900 something maybe page book that they then just chose the perfect cutoff point to turn it into 3 books. That's genuinely what it felt like reading. It was just like, yeah, of course that's what's gonna happen next. It feels so tightly plotted and paced and just so put together. I love it. Yeah. Which brings me to the enemies to lovers whole shebang that I was talking about last video. Jude and Carden, Jude especially, I would place her in the enemy category very much so. She hates Carden. Understandably so. She hates most of the fairies. Again, understandably so. Carden, he kind of gives me the vibes of like he's only pulling your hair because he likes you. Not a good message to send, but that was kind of the vibes that Carden was giving me of like, he likes Jude and hates that he likes her. And then the main problem that I have with enemies to lovers is you have to get the pacing right. You have to convince me that they're enemies. You have to bring me into that murky middle ground. It has to be paced well, because it's that middle ground that convinces me that they've gone from enemies to lovers. And I think that's why The Wicked King is my favorite book in the trilogy. This book is the murky middle ground, and I love that it took almost the whole series to get us there, to get us into the category of lovers from enemies. Again, the pacing. Enemies, murky middle ground, lovers. Yes! And also, they as a couple are just really fascinating because they're both like, this is not a relationship, I hope, that the average person wants or should emulate in any way, shape, or form. I mean, all things with consent, whatever floats your boat, you know, if both of you are cool with it. Personally, it's not for me, but again, the way that it's crafted is like, yeah, they're absolutely begrudging allies. And they have to continuously work together to get out of things, and it's going to make them see each other in another light. And this book details exactly that step by step. So that by the time in book 3, Jude is like, damn it, I like the dude. You believe it. I believed it, at least. I do think that, again, it is so hard to go from like genuine enemies to genuine lovers and for me to believe it. But this series, it is so funny. Last week, here I am, like, enemies to lovers, really difficult to pull off. Freaking pulled off. I'm eating my own words now. Again, it's hard to convince me. It's a really tough sell. I have been sold on Jude and Carden. Again, not a couple, not people that should be admired, but this is how you do enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers, by definition, in my opinion, has to be slow burn. This series is a slow burn. Also, spoiler warning again, I love fake forced marriages. It is one of my favorite tropes. And it makes perfect sense for the story. I love the way that it came about. I love it. It's so fun. To me, fake forced marriages is one of the best ways to get a bickering couple, to move into the territory of admitting their feelings. Let's talk about the few criticisms I have. We're gonna start with the biggest one. The naming schemes of the titles. This book does not count for that. Book 1 is obviously The Cruel Prince. Cool, we've established that. Book 2 is The Wicked King. Makes sense. Why the frick is book 3 called The Queen of Nothing and not The Nothing Queen? It genuinely bothers me, and I totally recognize that it's such a petty reason to be frustrated. You have established a title schema of the adjective royal title, prince, king, queen. To me, it makes sense that it would be the cruel prince, the wicked king, the nothing queen. That makes way more sense to me. I don't care for the title of this book, which really tells you that there's not a whole lot to criticize about this book from my reading experience. I think that you can absolutely add your own critiques. Please do so in the comments below. The other critique that I have, that I can kind of talk my way out of a little bit, is the ending of The Queen of Nothing. So huge spoiler warning here. If you guys would like to skip ahead, please do so. The ending of The Queen of Nothing is arguably anticlimactic. The series has been building up to this grand battle, this war, and the fact that it is solved by solving a riddle can feel like it's anticlimactic. It can feel like, oh, okay. The reasons I can talk myself out of being super upset about that, but also understanding why you would be upset about that, is twofold. One, a lot of this series is about wordplay. It's about deciphering the clever ways in which people speak. Fairies speak in riddles. It's that concept of, if a fairy asks you, what is your name, you need to respond with, you can call me, and then some other name, because then they're not going to steal your name, right? Like, that's the whole concept. That is the entire thing with this series. Figure out what they're saying, because fairies can't lie, but they can deceive, which again, love that concept. So the fact that that is such a core element to this series, and that's how it's resolved, is like, I get it. That makes some sense to me. Fine, I accept. The other reason that I can let it go is way more personal. I appreciated the lack of violence. That has been something that has been very surprising for me, is like venturing into the fantasy and romantasy genres the way that I have recently, and discovering just how much violence is in them. It's been a little mind-boggling, but I can get pretty tired of a lot of the violence in these stories. So I was genuinely considering, after reading The Cruel Prince, taking a break, reading some just generic escapist romance novel, just giving myself a break. But the series was just way too good, so I just kept reading it and I couldn't stop. In conclusion, one of my new favorite series. I loved myself. And if you want to give this series a try, I highly recommend it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stereotypical YouTuber stuff, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye! This does make me reflect back upon the Mistborn trilogy because a lot of people love Brandon Sanderson's works precisely because they're so expertly plotted. And that's one of the big reasons why I love this trilogy, is because it's so tightly plotted, in my opinion. Like, none of it drags. And I really think it just comes down to personal taste. Like, it is 100% subjectivity. I preferred and enjoyed reading the literal words, the prose of the novels themselves in the Folk of the Air series way more than the Mistborn trilogy. And again, that's just all about personal taste. What I loved about this series is, like, the characters are so flawed. Like, that's their main thing. And I loved reading such awful people who are also redeemable. And again, the experience itself was so much more enjoyable. And to reiterate, it's just personal taste. I just enjoy the prose of this series more.